Hello. How you doing? Good.
I'm okay, man. I'm okay. How are you doing, brother?
Well, in this moment, let's just turn this volume up. Right, there we go. In this moment, I'm pretty good, I think. I've just been, there's a song called Love Train, right, which is like a bluesy, with a country feel, a blues rock song, and it goes on for like 10 minutes or something. It's got a jam section in it. And I've been doing it for years, and it's funny, like the drums on the computer are fucking awesome, you know, really good. So hopefully it will be pulled off as good as it should be, if that makes sense.
Well, it will be because you're always tuned into the right vibration. But speaking of which, can I just say that this is the beginning of all of our new discussions. Can you see that at all?
Yeah, nice bowl.
Can you see inside the Buddha? Hang on.
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So what Jill did is the other bowl cracked in transit, right? So it had no sound.
Yeah, it messes it up, doesn't it?
Couldn't get any sound out of it. So she said, look, you keep the old bowl. It's a decorative bowl now. I'll send you this Buddha bowl. It's a bit bigger. Use the same beater, and I won't charge you any extra money, and I'll even take care of the postage.
Oh, nice.
So she's lovely. I'm really, really chuffed. So now what we're going to do, if you could just close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, please.
Yeah.
So the C-sharp vibration reverberates with the harmonic resonance of the planet's expressive energy. All harmonic resonance of the planet is now tuned into this conversation. And above all, we are protected. Our information exchange is being protected between myself and my compadre, Riki Buckingham. So by the grace of God, so be it. So be it.
Thank you.
Brother, I'm going to be very frank in this discussion because we've hit what we call the tipping point. And the tipping point is I now have all the information, and I have a very, very genuinely clear understanding of the agenda of the world for the next 12 to 14 months.
Good.
Now, you and I are already well ahead of the curve, and so is Celestine, and so are a number of other people. But our group, in other words, our tribe, is extremely small and concentrated.
Mm.
And I don't mind it being that way because I know that the energy being concentrated means that it's coming from a pure sourcial self, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's not much disharmony between us all at the moment, which is good. You know, well, there hasn't been at all, has there? You know, so that kind of helps. And then I think when people come in naturally into a tribe, you know, at the right time.
So what we need to be careful of is that I'm now convinced that all our communications are being monitored. And I've seen too many things now, man. I've seen things outside my house. I've had interesting knocks on the door in the middle of the night. I've had rooftop antics taking place in my home, which has scared the shit out of me, to be frank. There just seems to be a stepping up, if you like, of not being able to censor, you know, what it is that we do. So everything that we now share, we will password protect.
Yeah, good.
I also want to let you know that a very dear friend of mine, Tim McNeely, who has been in raw foods like you and cultured foods, fermented foods, for a really long time, has now seen the real benefit of purifying the entire cosmic channel by no longer succumbing to the addiction of processed food.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So you're so right on, man, and it's taken me a while to embrace it, but as of now, I'm embracing it, right? I really am. I'm going to learn as much as I can about natural food and drawing from nature and eating, you know, in a much more deliberate sense for health and vitality, because we need to remain super strong, right? Strength is our key.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the final thing, just to put things into perspective, and then we can sort of just start our discussion. Telegram has a desktop version. The desktop version, which I'll send you, I just sent it to Celestine, and she's like, wow, I didn't even know this existed. Because if you looked at that picture, little group of pictures, how Apple is now going to remove Telegram, and very soon Signal will be removed from the App Store. They want you to be on WhatsApp because WhatsApp is controlled by Facebook, and Facebook is owned by Google and Amazon. Okay. Right. So the desktop version, which Tobias was kind enough to put me into, allows us not only to encrypt our communication on the desktop version, not on the phone, on the desktop version, but every audio we send, we can download, and every audio we receive, we can download. We could not do that in WhatsApp, if you remember.
Oh, it's a pain in the ass. You can get to the files in that, but you've got to convert them all and everything.
And it was just really difficult to maintain what is called a workable file size, because as you know, if you're sending 20, 30-minute, 40-minute audios like we do, you're talking about ridiculous file sizes which take up major storage on the device.
Right, that's good. That's good.
So Telegram is our key, and Zoom will also be our key, as long as we make sure that at the end of the conversion, we then go back online to zoom.us where we got the app, find the conversion, the recording, and delete it.
Oh, good. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you can get rid of it all, and then hopefully we're all good to go. That's good.
Get rid of it so that the only version we have is the one like I'm recording now. It's between you and me. And at the end of it, I'll convert it and save it, send it to you via WeTransfer, and then I'll delete it from the cloud.
Yeah, I didn't even know they had it stored at their thing.
They have everything. They have millions and millions and millions of audio recordings from people all over the world, which you agreed to. You made a promissory contract with Zoom when you agreed to download the app.
And who looks at that stuff?
Who do you think?
Not many.
Who do you think? Basically, the deep state, or what is known as COG, is looking at everything, because the information is going to be used against us. We are going to be the pawns that implement surveillance culture starting in less than 2 weeks from now.
Makes sense. Well, yeah, that soon you feel things are going to amp up, yeah.
Yeah. So you are going to be asked to surveil me, and I'm going to be asked to surveil you. And that's why when we get notifications popping up on our desktops or our laptops or our phones, we have made a promissory contract with YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, everything. And that promissory contract ensures that the individuals who have given us the access to the app, they now have a legal right to disseminate that content in any manner that they choose or see fit. It is truly scary stuff. This is deep state. This is control mechanism. This is, without a doubt, the depopulation of planet Earth.
Well, what can I say? I mean, it's just immense. I mean, to the point where, like, your brain probably only take it in pieces, you know, sort of thing. Us, in general, over time. But it was interesting because I was wanting to make a Android app that was a messenger. But now we've got Signal and Telegram, at least at the moment, they seem to be all right. But of course, if you know you make something yourself, you've only got, you know, you can access it. So it's I'm sure people are doing that, but it's the time and all of that to try and get it all sorted and be a distraction.
I would suggest without a shadow of a doubt that if you have the capability to develop your own protected communication app, do it, man, because it will become super in demand. You will have a demand for it. People are going to get a little bit of a trigger very shortly, because we're being told that there will be a hologram that will be beamed from the moon that will present what looks like a fleet of alien spacecraft.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And it looks like our military, that is the American and the Russian military, and even we don't know too much about the Chinese at this stage, but I'm pretty sure they're somewhat, embroiled in this bullshit. They're going to look as if they're engaging, and going to look as if there's damage, what they call repercussion of the invasion. But it's all holographic. It will not be actually happening.
That's interesting. A little while ago, I saw something about these aircraft that had this energy that was being EMF or whatever energy was destroying the electronics in the other devices, and I think it was scalar. I think it was scalar wave technology, So we got that, and then we've got the holographic stuff, which I think they've probably already been doing for quite a while, actually. I can remember one day going. It was quite far away from an airport, so it wasn't too close to an airport, but there was these lights going across the sky in the clouds, and I was thinking, what the hell? There was no obvious source of where the light was coming from, And, this was years ago when I was young. So back then they were still messing around with, all of this stuff then. But now the technology's got incredibly... This is the thing, this age that we're in, I feel like we're in technological warfare, and biological, is the other one, which is, affecting the water, affecting the food, affecting the air, vaccines and all of that. So it's... I'm walking the fine balance between remaining aware of it, but still enjoying my life, but not being too ignorant. It's hard to stay in the balance at times.
I was given a choice. I was told by Tobias pretty much in no certain terms that to be a mouthpiece for truth has a price. And it takes great guts and great courage, not only to have the will to present the information, but to be consistent. So he said, don't be surprised if you will be targeted as a course, but you're a strong personality. That's all I get from you. Whenever I speak to you, you're you're very powerful vibration. And I think you're going to be able to override the signal of them trying to disrupt your whole flow, if you like, your whole kind of expression and liberated flow.
I agree. That's what it is with entity manipulation. A lot of the time they only work on someone because they know they can get that result. They know they can get the person to react. So if you're strong in yourself, it's like for me, I won't post something controversial, for instance, on Facebook a lot of the time. I'll do something within the bounds of what's acceptable if I feel I can handle that. But if I know that I'm going to get a backlash and I don't feel in a strong place, then why put your head out of water, and say, here I am, It's really stupid. And a lot of people are doing that. And then they're getting all these attacks coming in. But the attacks don't come in as much when the world knows that you're not going to crumble, because you're not. You're just going to stay solid. And that's your protection in that, self-assurity is ultimately our protection, So
absolutely. To remain in the center, and as Celestine says very often to me, always hold to the highest, no matter what. You see, we've got lots of people at the moment in our circle that are trying to get us to rethink the way we are presenting ourselves, the way we are presenting truth, the way we are expressing ourselves. But we cannot afford to weaken our resolve, even though these are people that we know and these are people that we, to a degree, respect. And I feel that at the moment, it's really important to really remain strong and resilient in the way that we live our lives and express our truth. We're not having a good connection here at all. Okay, just move if you need to.
Real.
Seems better.
How's that?
It seems better. Yeah, you're moving freely again now, so that's good.
It's quite good in a way because I'm in an area where there's not much mobile signal, but I've had to go to the mobile signal because of this.
Tell me, are you on a 4G or have you got 5G where you are?
This is a 4G. It's very low. Literally, I was on 1 bar. I think in this room, I'm in, two bars out of 5 on the connection,
Okay.
So
you're at your father's, are you? You're at your father's, not at mum's.
This is my mum's house here, and it's in southeast England. This part of the country is a little bit more controlled, but in a way, it's been good for me in a way because sometimes you want to live where your comfort zone is, where you feel more comfortable, but that isn't always the best for you. So the energy and the people is very worky and very, so I've tried to work with it here, but it's quite a lonely life out in this little village, but it's lonely for a lot of people at the moment, isn't it? So
we're all alone at the moment. That's one thing that is part of the so-called integration process. Because so many people will die with the next phase of this pandemic. It's not a COVID pandemic anymore. It's actually going to be called a pandemic.
Yeah.
And there's a video out at the moment that details it in great timeline, chronicles it in a timeline for when it will roll out and then when the next phase is. So it's a constant barrage of pandemics and vaccines.
Yeah.
And the vaccines are nothing more than placebos in the arm, right? The whole placebo effect of I'm taking something, sending a unconscious trigger to my mind circuit, and it's believing that I am now alleviating the symptoms or the symptomatic nature of this virus.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything of the sort. What it's doing is it's reducing your ability to fight any form of infection. Yeah,
it wouldn't surprise me. Our immune systems and all that have been down a lot for the last, however many years. And also because of the soil, the amount of times we've turned the soil. We used to leave the fields for a few months before we worked on them again, and the soil was being so degenerated. And actually, if you were to look at where life actually is, life is actually in the soil, and many of us have our whole lives, we don't even spend it out there in the soil, I got an experience of that last year. So, and those bacteria and all those, that's very healthy for us. There's actually evidence that says that a lot of diseases, I don't remember which ones, have got worse since we've become so cleanly and so, so for a long time, the immune system's been battered at and it worked away at, for us collectively as a whole. And I think also with parasitical stuff that goes on in the body, so.
I think it's really important. No one's talking about the parasites. They are a constant evolving state of infection because they are mutating to suit the different integration environments in which we subject them to. More processed food, more parasites. Less processed food, less parasites can live in that environment. So I'm with you on that score. I'm also willing to let you know that every single ailment, sickness, debilitating form of disease has been man-made. Smallpox, man-made. Cholera, Ebola, influenza, all of these things have been manufactured, the AIDS virus manufactured, the SARS virus manufactured. And we've been so stuck in the amnesia that it's only now that our synapses have illuminated through the gamma rays of the sun that we're realizing that, hang on a minute, there's too much of a pattern here for us to ignore it.
Spot on. Yeah, and the energy from the sun, I actually believe there's information, you know, from the sun, and that information goes into the plants and everything. Yes. And when you're growing all your plants in fake environments, you know, there's still life force there, because, you know, the all that is, you know, the life force that is getting into these plants either way. But I just feel that there's this extra element, which you'd call the spirit or whatever, that's in plants that are wild and, you know, more grown without the intention for high profits, you know. And that's the interesting thing. We think that our actions on this planet are just to do with the physical world, and only that affects our reality. But what's actually true is how we feel about what we do, our alignment, what our intention is. Like we were saying about, you know, if we one day had land, the intention of what we do on that land actually affects the whole future timeline. And similar things, like, for instance, if I decided to stop smoking, I wouldn't have had to actually stop smoking. I would have had to just decide to do it. In that decision opens up a whole new energy to come into my aura and affect my life. And it's my first day of just stopping smoking. So in other words, our intentions are much stronger than we realize, you know. So the same with the foods and what we're doing to the planet with all of that, rather than coming together and actually working together on the land to use food to heal, you know, rather than for just commercial gain. So the prospects and the possibilities of that are amazing to what it could do to the human, you know.
Absolutely. And the intention is what ultimately draws new event streams in from the other densities, the etheric field, not the auric field. We got to get away from this astral bullshit, because the astral bullshit is where we've been ultimately floating between densities. The third density and the fourth density have been misconstrued as what are known as neutral buoyancy points. They're not. They're actually working in juxtaposition to each other as mirror versions of the astral realm. The fourth dimension, or the fourth density, is a wider and more expansive expression of the astral realm. Not good. Not good.
Yeah, the astral realm is more where the illusions are and the false sort of. It's interesting, that, isn't it? But
what's the false light? Ultimately, the false light that everybody is kind of drawing in and allowing the hologram of its illumination to make them think that they're spiritually aligning when they're not. They're actually regressing back into that divergent timeline.
Yeah, what I'm getting from that a lot is when people feel they need power, because, you know, a lot of us who felt powerless in our lives, we feel that we need the power, and that's where it's like it's about the crystals that we wear. It's about, you know, this bringing this energy forward, and we allow that in, and people go, God, that person's spiritual. They look really, you know, but it's perceived as like, you know, self-respect and dignity, but it's actually, you know, there's the true version of it.
It's a very narrow cast consciousness, man, and that's where humanity fails every time. We get to this point where we look like we're going to cross over back to a resurgence of spirit, and then we blow it every time, because our consciousness becomes so narrow cast that we can't seem to see beyond our need for fulfillment, our need for aggregation, our need for, you know, kind of expanding upon, if you like, or deepening the expression of the false light that exists within all of us. Why? Because we're not willing to work with our shadow. We're not willing to face and allow ourselves to become immersive to our shadow self.
I agree, and I think that there's a lot of fear behind it all as well. You know, it's a lot of fear that, you know, involves all that. And I fall into a lot of these things. day by day. You know, I fall into these illusions all the time.
We all do, Riki, and I think just by you saying that and acknowledging that it's there, that it's real to you, is already a step to the healing, right? Because healing needs to take on a completely new form, right? You know, this whole kumbaya, baba, la, ha, la, ha, and all that, it don't mean anything anymore. It used to, when we used to believe that we had these chakras that used to work, you know, in an effort to, you know, allow us to collapse and transcend and all that. But we're not like that anymore. Most of us are very upright. Most of us are expressions of crystalline sound vibration. So our crystalline, you know, core is very much already attached to sourcial self. But we're just not allowing ourselves to believe it and integrate it, you know. What do you...
this is my thoughts. Yeah, it's good because this is what's come up this morning talking to someone about guilt and shame and forgiveness and all that, you know. So I still, you know, I know I've got a lot to do in myself, and the hardest things they say is to forgive yourself. And, you know, a lot of people will look at forgiving other people, and when they forgive other people, they find that relationship, that person they've not talked to for years, suddenly talks to them the next day after they've forgiven them, or, you know, things, the energy gets freed up, you know.
Free, yeah.
And I've been realizing that, you know, the shame and you might not know that you're carrying that. It might be something that you did for a trauma. You know, for instance, for me, it was leaving my mother when I was younger, you know, and then feeling this sense of I'm a bad kid, you know, not consciously, but unconsciously maybe, you know, I'm bad. And then this is what I was talking about with this person, was that these are the doorways that allow ourselves to be punished. So through us feeling shame and stuff, and our shadow with all that, if there is such thing as entities, which I think there are, we give them the punishing stick to punish us. We say, look, here you go, punish me. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. So look, you know, I'm crap. So beat me with.
You're absolutely right. Mankind cannot recognize its own worthiness. And if you can't have worthiness, you can't have valor. And without valor, you will never embody the 6 heart virtues. You will never embrace the purity of the sovereign integral that we all are. We are royalty. I've come to understand that. We are genetic royalty, man. We have so much DNA confluence from so many races outside of this perception of a galaxy. And yet the ones that are the deep state and the secret society, you know, courses of Freemasonry, the Bohemian Grove, the Illuminati, and the list goes on, have all fused to create what is known as a cartel. And the cartel is worthy of one thing and one thing only: inspire fear, create dependency, and then manipulate the outcome. That's the whole point of globalization under a new world order.
I agree. And a lot of people in the positions of power like that do have the stronger, different bloodline, you know, a different bloodline. And I don't know if you remember, but there were studies done about people who were rapists or serial killers or whatever, you know, and up until a certain age, until they'd had this trauma, then this gene switched on and then their behavior changed. So I think a lot of people have the propensity for these sort of behaviors and things, you know, and then it comes out after, you know, so after there's a trauma. So, you know, and I feel like the shaming and this punishing energy is there from that agenda, whatever that agenda is. It's about the punishing the people and the battering down of that royalty. You know, how dare you? You're slaves. You're slave race. You know, human race. You're slaves. So we need to get you in check, and you should feel bad because you are bad. You're not worthy. You know. So I feel that there's been a lot done, and I don't know whether the implants for that were put into us a long time ago, whether that was what was put in with the DNA manipulation originally that was done to us to have this feeling of unworthiness or shame. or whether it's just that it's been done through our traumas in our lives. But what seems to happen is that the people that you were talking about before, they're the ones who put out that energy a lot, and they're only a small group, but their effect has spread out throughout humanity so much that the average Joe is now affected by programming through school or through media or whatever. That it's designed to disempower the truth of them, their soul. But of course, this is such a great time now, because through the spreading of the internet and the talking with each other and being able to express truthfully without this intermediary media or liar in between, I can try and discern the truth more, and begin to recuperate and bring back our spirit,
The trouble that we have here is that the gestation period of what you're talking about is different for every man, woman, and child. So depending on how elevated your intelligence is, will also predetermine the levels at which they need to go to in an effort to get you into a subservient capacity, right? So one thing we're learning more and more, which again, I think Gigi really touched upon, and that was the re-emergence of the divergent timeline reflected in the Antichrist antisocial energy that's been emerging, and that's very much being embodied in what we now call the re-emergence or the reconnectivity to the grey line, the grey races, They're at the root of it all, okay? We got to stop worrying about so much about the reptilians, and we got to worry about the Arcturians and all that. It's the greys. It's the advanced versions of ourselves trying to reverse engineer the technocratic dependency, right, on technology is our greatest enemy. The soul contract we made with our smartphone is more powerful than the soul contract we made with those that we have wounded in previous lifetimes and therefore embedded traumas within our cosmic channel, right?
Yeah, I agree, because by opening this doorway, it's like you only have to open the doorway a little bit for a doorway to be opened on big scale. And this was my concern, is that humanity is not in its power enough to be able to go, I can use, right, okay, like as a tribe, you'd be like, well, there's the technology center just over there, and we go there once in a while. We generally talk to spirit, and we don't usually go there, but if we have to, we go there. But you need to be strong to deal with this technology. Someone would think that's funny me saying that, but I feel that's the state of where it is. And of course, we have opened up this timeline through all getting involved in the mobile phones. And this is why it's important for some of us to hold back and say no, because this is evolution. And in evolution, you don't need everyone to do all the same thing and everyone to become transhuman and everyone, because it's a recipe for disaster, because there's no one holding the space of how was humanity before this happened. And I think this is what's happened, as you say, to the Greys, is that, we talked about they lost their emotional capacity and have become very interested in our emotions, along with other life forms, become very interested in the feeding off the emotional centers, which is why it is a war down here. We need to be very discerning and very aware of, in any moment, of what we're doing and how are we using our energy and with others.
Absolutely. The human evolution, what I would call the evolutionary process, has been founded and driven by emotional experience. And when they lost that, because they became so fused into the transhuman agenda, the cyborg AI kind of connectivity, that emotional expression disappeared. It got lost because everything was more about, I don't have to work, I don't have to earn, I don't have any dependencies on these things. But then there was nothing that drove. The passion dried up, and there was no driving force. There was no human force reinforcing the very course or the very concept of humanity.
That's right. Yeah, it was organic originally, I'm sure, for them. And I mean, we would call organic this world, because this is what we live in, isn't it? And,
Yes.
and you know, we're
Yes.
that's our word for it. But their equivalent of that would have been before they got. I'm imagining that they got too emerged with the technology that actually lost parts of the DNA or parts of their, you know, true, because everything comes from source, doesn't it? And I think in getting so disconnected from source, then reaching out, which is what we're in that stage now. We began reaching out to the smartphones,
Yeah.
reaching out to everything, haven't we? You know, reaching out to buying products, you know, and I get caught in that too. You know, I'm like, oh, you know, shiny thing, which is all right, but it's just that we've gone so far down that timeline now, haven't we? And we've got to the point where it's like, no more cars, you know, no more consuming too much electricity, all of this. It's time to actually think about what we're doing, you know, and that's the stage we're at. But I feel like they destroyed, you know, their proper connection and through their genes, through their systems. And now they had to become the gods that were trying to create their offspring or their life. But the problem is, it's like, it's not coming from that, you know, it's like a tapestry. Yeah. And the tapestry, I mean, we can connect straight to source, but I feel that what we had down our generations, you know, going back to Africa, was this woven tapestry. Each generation, we stay as much as we can in our truth. Yes, there's a trauma, but we managed to clear that trauma. So the next family, you know, and we've been weaving this down the generations. And of course, Atlantis and Lemuria, that it was a big kink in the thing. And I think there's a bit of trouble for some of us accessing the memories because it hurts. But within that pain, there's a great lesson to be learned. So humanity, we need to, there's no way of getting away from everything that we've done. There's no way of, we have to face the shadow. We have to face what happened. And the other entities, the Greys, they have to face what happened as well. So and probably realise that beyond it, you know, they're okay. But
look, I think at the end of the day, the other thing that we need to concern ourselves with, as well as they need to concern themselves with, is that there are other entities and or races that have implemented this holographic assimilation technology in other planets and on other species. And it worked brilliantly, because at the end of the day, once you wipe the memory, once you clear the cellular memory, and then you only allow what is programmed, right? That's what conditioning and programming is. Then you can just build upon it. And when you build upon that with no moral fiber, right? No morality whatsoever, completely removed, there is that epiphrine, that adrenaline, that dopamine, that serotonin rush that they get from the manipulation of the human genetic or the gene, you know, the genome. And the children, as I'm learning, the children are ultimately the perfect blank canvases, because they haven't had life experience, especially the really, really young ones, to be manipulated genetically and altered, their DNA altered. And that's where the whole, you know, MK Ultra and all these other, you know, divergent programs were implemented by the military since the late 30s and all the way up to Nazism, and then so on and so forth, you know. So I think that we also are aware that there are other technologies that are being used against us that we don't even have a clue is even taking place, right? So one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that in order to see the signs of the, what I would call the tipping point, where everything turns around and the amnesia becomes real, is start looking in the sky at the chemtrails, because the chemtrails themselves will start to generate symbols.
Okay.
And these symbols are picked up by a subconscious component within the synapses of the human mind as a means by which to trigger into action when those symbols are received. So I'm looking into talking to a number of individuals about, is it represented as sacred geometry, or is it represented as reverse mirroring, what they call mirroring? Chrome uses mirroring on the internet, the Chrome browser, in an effort to project the black mirror into our homes, on our TVs, our tablets, our phones, etc., etc. And when we turn that off, we're still left with our reflection in it. That's what Tobias and I were talking about with the Snow White reference.
Yeah.
That when the Wicked Witch looked into the mirror, she believed that the reality reflected back at her was her true reality.
Yes, yeah.
And it wasn't.
So lost in the illusion.
Lost in the illusion.
That's the general thing that's going on here. You know, I mean, I'm surprised I'm managing to keep some of my awareness in this world the way it is. But nature has always been the one that pulls me back. And the other interesting point is that the normal world, the things that we're seeing all the time, the roads, the gates, you know, the uniform. It just reminded me what you were saying there about symbols. The fact that everything dulls our senses, our mind, you know, the mundaneness of this supposed real world, which they call the real world, which is, you know, just get on with it, you know, don't think about crazy things, just keep your head down. And the natural world is very flowing and much freer. And when we see those images of the natural world, it relaxes it's like, just all the parts of the brain, you know, the animal part of the brain, I'm not sure what parts of the brain, but so it serves to help us feel like we know where we are. And at animal level, we know where we are when we're in nature. And the fight flight goes right down, because especially once we go and have a little look around, you know, it's good on an animal level to know our little bit of territory. And that's very important to us. But when we're glued to the TV and the computers and that, we're getting another reality fed to us, and we're losing touch with the reality around us. So it is almost like sometimes people are going into the astral realm, just being so absorbed within a concept or an idea that they've read, and they're not actually really present anymore, you know. So this is concerning to me because of what you were saying about, which is that because our attention is being pulled so much into this other reality, which is, I think, in the case of the Greys, could be where you become so lost in a new holographic universe that they created, and they forgot the real world around them, which is like the Matrix, isn't it?
Right on, man.
I mean, in the Matrix, you know, we're all plugged into these other things, and we think that this reality here is real. So, can
you imagine for 1 second, like they say that by 2025, I believe that's as far as we'll go. I think if the population doesn't revolt. Now, look at what's happening in Amsterdam. I did some research. And Amsterdam, which is kind of bordering European Union, but very close to the UK too, remember, right? Very close, right? But they're revolting. They're saying, no, we will not allow the curfew to stand. Therefore, any of the rigidity that goes with the curfew that is being implemented by society and government, you know, control of society won't be tolerated. But is it enough for those people then to be tear gassed, for those people to be incarcerated, imprisoned, their human rights stolen or whatever like that? I'm not sure. But what I will tell you is that by 2025, they'll have implemented the final stage of the depopulation hybridization agenda, which is what it is, this I can't remember. I'll look it up in a minute, because it's you know, there's a huge paper on it, massive paper that you can still get hold of through the Internet Archive. But one of the things that I thought was really mind-blowing for me was going back to the inner child represented by the innocence of the symbology of an actual child. And one of the things that the research proved, keeping in mind that most of the internet is controlled narrative, I know that now. So is this what I'm about to tell you controlled narrative? It's yet to be determined, but I'll throw it out there because I think it's worth you hearing. It turns out that The Wizard of Oz by Alan Herbert in 1938, when it was first filmed, was plagued with ridiculous problems. The witch got burned. Dorothy was abducted. The dog died 3 times. The Tin Man. Did you know there's a scene literally when they first confront the lion where the Scarecrow pulls a gun? He's got a gun actually waving around in the back of Dorothy, right?
Right.
As if to say, I'm taking you hostage. I'm taking your mind hostage. Because The Wizard of Oz was the perfect holographic projection of what happens when we fall too deeply into the dream.
Oh, yeah. Got all these shivers, goosebumps of this.
There you go. We're in the dream up to our neck. And the Wicked Witch is essentially Cog, or the deep state, the manipulating force that sees us nothing more than playthings. Let's toy with them. Let's see how far we can push them. But let's never forget that to us, the elitists, they are nothing. They hold no sway.
Absolutely spot on. And these guys, I know you know their names, who are apparently opening up a portal to another dimension with technology.
Well, this is people who are... That's the whole Hadron Collider, man. That's what the whole CERN experience, or the CERN agenda has been, is to explode particle-based, quantum universe to ensure that everything can be completely fragmented and then put together in a completely different way.
Right, yeah. Well, the agenda with all that's crazy, because this is people, again, who aren't in their power, deciding to do things and say, oh, well, there's these other entities in this other dimension. They don't care about us, but it's okay. We're going to open up a portal with our technology, our supercomputers, that opens up to another dimension. I mean, just what is going on? I've actually, by the way, I just wanted to say, I've just taken off this. You won't believe what this is.
I can't see it. What is it? Is it a watch?
This is a tracker which tracks your heartbeat, your sleep activity, which is the thing I was interested in. So I'm just going to use it temporarily for about a week indoors or so, a couple of weeks indoors, and then a couple of weeks out in my tent, because I want to know the difference between the sleeping on the earth. It tells you about the REM sleep and, the different stages,
Great.
So obviously it's interesting, at least with this, I know that I can choose to use this and then put it down. But this is the problem with the future. Will people be able to put things down, and actually...
Well, they can't.
Turn away.
They can't, because the dependency is driving their passion for life. You see, if we all of a sudden lost complete touch with the cloud, right? The cloud is where everything is stored, archived, and then transmitted to a central database in our holographic expression. Each one of us holds a holographic preferential motherboard. If that motherboard was disconnected from its transformer, its power source, we would not be able to function. We wouldn't know how to function, rather than me coming up to you and holding you in my arms and saying, it's going to be okay. Instead, there would be widespread fight or flight, resulting in plain of sight murder on the street. You're getting in my way. I have to get rid of you.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the morality and the sensitivity goes, which again is linked in with all this. The fact that emotional sensitivity, when it's not manipulated, when it's natural, is a great guide for us, because it says, you can feel, and you, through the heart and through your body, you don't just know a sense that it's wrong to mistreat someone. You feel, no, I don't. That's a part of me. I don't want to do that. So we need our sensitivity back as well. There's so many
there's so many things bombarding the singularity, but let's start talking about solutions, okay? Because this video is very tuned in, man. It's like, you know, before I came online, I asked all the guides, as I said, I asked, you know, the C sharp of the singing bowl to be the protective force field around who we are. I'm getting smashed at the moment by, you know, a number of quantum physicists on my phone at a ridiculous hour of 2:30 in the morning. So there's things going on. But let's talk solution. So the first thing that I think we need to do to reinforce the fact that whatever it is that we create and co-create is what we reflect into the world. Agreed? Okay. So we have to rebirth our heart. Our heart is sick. Okay. Your heart, my heart, our friends' hearts, they're sick. They're not tuned at all. Right. We have to rebirth the heart experience. And
everyone's trying to fix you.
Exactly. And the only way to do that is to be in a constant river of ease and grace in forgiveness. And the forgiveness is not external forgiveness. We're not forgiving anybody anymore. That's just rubbish, right? If someone does something bad to you, you did it to them. It's as simple as that, right? There's none of this, you know, eye for an eye bullshit, rah-rah, that kind of led to barbarianism and totalitarianism and the Machiavellism and all that. So the first thing is we need to forgive us. I forgive me. I love me. I thank me. I forgive me. I'm sorry for me. I'm the only thing that's important here, right? And once I go through that, once I really tune into that self-evaluation, my heart becomes a brand new Metatron. It becomes a multi-dimensional cube-like expression. It doesn't look like this hard bullshit. Never did. Right?
I'm also seeing it going from inverted, the satanic, because the negative side of the satanic stuff is about flipping everything upside down on its head. Everything that's sacred becomes like that. So we're bringing it back up again to its, you know, natural state.
Yeah, absolutely. Reversing the chalice. Remember the phallus and the chalice, right? Echoed in Da Vinci's Last Supper. You know, Mary Magdalene and the Christ ultimately forming the chalice, which is the oneness of all things in existence.
Wow.
I mean, again, it's ridiculous how much stuff is coming clean and clearly into focus. And it all has its point. It all has its point of return, you know, where we are really finding the very core essence of truth, not all the periphery stuff. So once we rebirth our heart and we re-evaluate and regenerate the 6 heart virtues, right? And the 6 heart virtues are whatever the individual wants them to be. For me, it's valor. For me, it's worthiness. For me, it's gratitude. For me, it's love. For me, it's compassion. And for me, it's patience and tolerance. They're my 6 heart virtues, right? So once you've rebirthed the heart, then the heart can be then used as the ultimate weapon against all of the attacks. You keep referring to the psychic attacks, the cyber attacks, the mental attacks, the etheric attacks, the astral attacks. The new embodiment of the heart energy, right, which is blue, by the way, not red, right? That's more rubbish. Red, my ass. It's blue, okay? The blue is the core of the earth, right? The very core of Gaia is blue. And that blue is this incredibly, it's like the sapphire blue. It's like the, you know, the blue of the ocean. It's like the blue of the sky, as above, so below. And all of these principles meshing into the oneness of the blue heart flame.
It's amazing that you say that, because there's been so many synchronicities over the last few days. I've been like, what the hell? You know, like, especially the last couple of days, and just positive comments from people when at the time that it was needed, everything was coming in when it's needed, you know. And mum texted me yesterday and she goes, oh, something amazing happened today. I was like, you know what, I'll tell you later, you know, when you get home. She said she went over to the lady over the road and she said she could see all blue all around her aura and everything, you know, loads of blue. My mum is a seer, but she's just not being used to seeing stuff, you know, but so she should tune in more and get used to it. And the lady said, wow, you know, like this morning I did this thing where I imagined all blue light around myself, you know. Like, and I've never done that before in my life, you know.
It's blue because it's kin 219. It's blue lunar storm. It's blue spectral storm. And we are the fractalized fragments of the storm.
Wow.
Now, do we want to be in the storm and washed around and thrown and turbulent and all that? Or do we want to be the eye of the blue lunar storm? That's
so
what
important.
The heart is. Yeah.
This is why we don't want to be a victim to all this stuff, like you say, bashing at us, because as soon as you attach to that, oh no, they do, you know, I hate the media for doing this, you know, I hate these entities for doing this, whatever, then you're giving it more power. What you want to be is like, thank you. Thank you for attacking me. You know, thank you for this person having a go at me. Okay. You're trying to help me get in my power. And that's really cool. So we can, the alchemy of turning something that seems a dire situation, which is this situation on planet Earth, into something very positive. And I'd like to say at the moment that I feel that along with this self-worth programming that we've had done on us to make us feel low as a species, you know, the whole species, we've forgotten that we are important, and not in a grandiose sort of ego kind of way, but that our decisions at this point and any point in time in history, but especially this point in history, because we've moved so far away from nature, our decisions are extremely important and they matter. So there's a science community who will say we're insignificant. Look at the size of the universe; it's massive, you know, and we're just this little virus going around. And I actually think a lot of those thoughts are actually coming from those beings who feel that we're a virus, who despise this, you know, who despise the human race. And some of the science community, I'm sure some of the spiritual community, are infiltrated with that energy that likes to degrade humans rather than love humans and celebrate humans for what they are, you know. So we're at a very, you know, we've got a lot more potential and a lot more power than we realize. And it's in this re-emergence of the heart, like you say, and believing in ourselves.
Yes.
All those things, which has been hard for me because in my own personal journey, I've been hiding my face and not wanting to share, you know. And then the reason you get confused is because some of us, we get these ideas of, well, isn't that being really egotistical, you know, going and sharing yourself, you know, shouldn't you just be humble? Exactly. So there's so much of this.
I don't believe it is. I've probably been one of the worst misconstruers of the ego expression than I could ever be, because I now understand that it's integral as a pure source.
Yeah.
But when it's been tainted, when it's been influenced, when it's been deliberately misdirected, then it only has one course, and that is to protect itself.
Which all boils down to fear again, really.
All boils down to fear. The ego will always arc up when, example, I had a conversation with a young girl the other day, and all she wanted to do was blurt at me, right? So I stopped her in mid-sentence and I said, did you realize that all you're doing is your ego is so desperate to vie for airtime in this exchange that you are actually turning me off. You are putting me off because I don't want to vie for airtime with you. I don't, right? Yeah. That's what a conversation is. It's two egos getting on a communication line to exchange an electrically charged impulse in the form of communication that is all about, I want my airtime and you need to shut up And then when you can, I want my airtime and you need to shut up. But what happens is the two egos come together and you start to talk over each other and heat your connection up to the point of an argumentative expression, and then nothing is achieved.
I absolutely agree. It's when that happens that I feel that's when the entity gets hold. So we've got our own ego, and then because this energy is like this, and then the two people are leaving the body in the heat of those intense emotions that are coming up, that's when these other energies ride in on the feeling and the manipulation comes in. So instead of you saying, you know, I think you're whatever, you actually start swearing, and you start saying, the person starts saying even more, there's more energy there. So
that's right.
So yeah, it's becoming very clear to us that staying focused, and it's not about not having emotion. It's not about being completely detached or disconnected, as in non-human and losing all your, you know, truth, but it's about remaining outside of it at the same time as allowing yourself to be a witness to what's happening. And that's so important, like you say, and, you know, allowing the heart to be reborn so that we can see clearly, because we're not going anywhere we might be going somewhere, but it's not going to be at the highest calling if we build these technologies and all this stuff, you know.
We have to get out of the delusion of what this so-called ascension process is. And I bought into the ascension symptoms. You bought into it. We all bought into it, you know. Oh, my physiology is changing. Oh, I'm seeing colors more vividly. Or I'm basically breaking through the astral realm. No, we're not. We're just waking up from amnesia. Our amnesia serum is wearing off. So what we're realizing instead, that the process is not that we're going anywhere, not that we're lifting our consciousness up. It's we're returning to our original blueprint. And what science lacks, and this is something I really need to reinforce, and I did the other night when I was talking to Tobias, is science has dealt in finites and absolutes for too long. It's like this because this is what the planetary precession of the equinoxes and the different yugas and ascending light ages and dark ages and black holes and blah, 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 all present and produce. But what they forget is there are exceptions to every rule. So whether you're a quantum physicist, whether you're a geneticist, whether you're a psychologist, a psychiatrist, you cannot deal in finites and absolutes anymore. There is flux in everything. There are anomalies and variations in every form of energy and expression on the planet. And the more that we tune in to that little bit of variation, I think the more we stay ahead of the control curve. What do you think?
That's interesting. I'll need to sort of digest that in time, but I think, you know, that really makes sense. I totally hear what you're saying, but
no one's talking about it, Riki. No one's talking about it. Why? Because the minute you try to debunk a scientific theory, E equals MC squared, the theory of relativity by Einstein or Descartes or Pythagoras, you know, the golden triangle, the grand royal cubit. The minute you debunk or you challenge those theories, you're considered a crank.
I know this is the thing, like if you look at the snowflakes, for instance, like every snowflake's different, you know, that's just like, wow, you know, because you're not going to see the same one very easily or at all again.
No.
And this is the thing, as you know, with the mind, it wants to find finite answers to everything, doesn't it? And pin it down. We're going to do this, right? We're going to get this land and we're going to do this, this, and this. And it's like, the universe is like, no, if you learn this first, then you'll get to that point and that point. So we start to realize it's the journey and the quality of the attention in any moment, which I think was what Eckhart Tolle said, you know, the quality of the presence in any moment is what's going to get you along your path. So then you start to realize, well, it's not about the getting to point B, it's the path itself, which is hard when you're feeling lost, you know. So in this way, everything has meaning and everything has substance. And this is why I don't know, you feel this as well, that everything is medicine. So all things are to teach us something. And the moment we start to say that's wrong, we start to push that away. And then, no, hang on, no, that's right. You know, like in 2020, that's wrong. Yeah, but 5 years later, no, actually, we need this now. You know, like the technology that made these vaccines, yeah, it was in the wrong hands, but actually now we actually need that technology, you know.
So with that said, you've got to understand that with what you just said then is that environment, right, changing, shifting environment, including cultural shift, etc., is going to influence the projection of people's understanding and perception of things. It's going to infect and affect the outcome.
Absolutely. And it's the quality of our consciousness that also affects the outcome of what we try to create in the outside world. So there's everyone going around trying to make a cure for cancer, or people trying to change the world, or all of these things. But like you say, this change that comes within helps us to discern and see more clearly the pathway forward. And we're only as good as the consciousness of the people creating these new technologies and these vaccines and all these things, you know. So it's like it's in the power of people who are not in a healthy way. And the problem is with the delusion, you don't get to see that, you know. And God, you know, wake me up from these delusions, because it's like I'm ready for that, you know.
I agree. And I just want to also put a little bit of focus on the fact that let's look at how so many of the so-called modern seers, whether they're evolutionary astrologists, whether they are alchemists, which I consider myself to be, most of them are coming from a prophetic perspective, that there is a level of prophecy that's being played out. But you mentioned something important, and that is people like Eckhart Tolle and people like Dolores Cannon are much older, wiser souls that have had many turns of the spiral in the different incarnations they've had, not only on this particular planet, but on other planets as well, to draw from the well of wisdom and knowledge to present their truth. These young kids, I'm hearing about all these young women, right? And these young men who seem to be blessed with second sight and some kind of empathic, you know, third eye vision, which is nothing more than a big pile of shite, you know, because they're just regurgitating crapola that they've read or seen or disseminated or pretended or perceived to channel from some other entity. People like Mark Sims should be put in jail for his bullshit about his Tejbar wank and all that, you know. Elizabeth April and her kind of, I'm tuned into the Galactic Star Federation, rah, rah, rah. I'm sorry, I'm being very contemptuous, but I'm being contemptuous for a reason. And that is, within that prophetic expression lies the false light, lies the falsehood that millions of people on our planet are brainwashing into, that they are being drawn into the memory recondition from the way that this information is shared and disseminated. And I have no time for any of it. You know, I call people out all the time now.
That's brilliant. There's again, it's another way of siphoning energy, because people's energy is siphoned away from themselves into the gurus and all of that, you know. And also I feel that there's a lot of, I sent someone recently who I felt like when she was channeling, the energy was coming from something else that felt like it was on the astral realm, yet she felt very sure of what she was saying. And also, for some reason, wasn't quite related to what you were saying, but I felt that because of this generation now and our disconnection from our body, from our sense of self, and, you know, we've gone into, I mean, just the whole schooling thing, you know, and then the technology and so many things disconnecting us from that sense of being present here. I think there's been a new kind of spirituality that's sort of come in which it's like ignore the body and everything because it's all illusory, which to some degree, nothing is real, you know, everything's all just energy. But the point is I feel that there's been this, you know, this lie put in, this illusion, another illusion being put in,
Yes,
to make us walk away from the sacred and the divine and say, well, everything's just an illusion. So, you know, I don't need to feel anything. I don't need to, you know, experience anything. Like it's just all illusion. So, and it's a very easy way, another way of spiritual bypassing, I suppose, is what I mean. And I think that's what's coming through these entities, through the people and the gurus in that. And it's like your energy is going to that person and they're feeding you this misinformation on a big scale. Yeah. And what I do know, if me and you and a group of other people come together around a fire and the truth just comes out naturally, you know, there's a fire there and we start to just speak our truth naturally, there's no agenda behind it, then it's quality and it's pure intent, you know, it's much more true. So it begs the question, you know, like if I was to try and set myself up as some kind of healer person helping people, it's really good to think that it's nice to do this for some money and to be able to survive, which is very good. And in this system, we've been tuned into that path of it's all about me surviving. Yes. And the fear of lack, like you say. But we need to be able to try and move into that new paradigm where it's about the we and the sharing. And in that way, because we're all, you know, we're all benefiting each other and working together, it means that when Source tries to connect with us and we try to bring our truth forward, hopefully it's more of a clarity because we've lost that fear of survival.
That's right.
Because we're sovereign on our planet and we know we own our own land, we can just go and get whatever. I mean, we shouldn't even have to own our own land, but, you know.
Look, the bounty and the beauty of the world should be available to all who have the courage to take it. It's as simple as that, you know, and if we're talking about carving out, you know, maybe 50 square meters of sovereign land for ourselves to live a very peaceful and balanced life. But one thing that is becoming increasingly clear, and you're going to love this one, man, there is a teacher out there that we've been missing and we've been avoiding for I don't know how many millennia, and that is the plants. The plants are talking, and the plants are receiving the higher magnitude, the magnified magnitude of the gamma rays of the sun and the photon energy, the quasars and the pulsar energy, and all of a sudden it's enriching their experience on Earth, and they want to tell us about it.
They want to share.
They want to share. So there is a channel that I found when I started to really feel into it by an incredible seer, a really, really worthy contender of, for lack of a better word, the ancient prophetic wisdom, Terence McKenna, and the We Plants Are Happy Plants channel.
Yeah.
Amazing, man. You know, talking about the mushroom and the mycelium, and that it's not a poison that gets into the human bloodstream, but rather an aspect that reflects the original DNA sequence. Mm-hmm. Like we actually add mushroom, enzymes, right? The living culture of the mushroom used to be part and parcel of the human DNA expression.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I feel that from what I've learned with the plants is that the spirit energy, I suppose, you know, the life force, which is beyond the actual physical, it's beyond the actual real physical thing. It connects right into our body and reminds our body of wellness, and it can tell the information. So we're thinking we're just getting sustenance from nutrients and vitamins and all that, but I feel, and this is just an inclination, you know, a sense, that these plants are reminding the body of how its original blueprint is of health, you know, and that's just amazing. And, you know, it feels optimistic to say that, but no, it also feels clear and it feels the right thing. So that's amazing, because it's not just that we're taking something from the plant's reminding us of how to live well.
Absolutely. And you take a singing bowl, like a crystal bowl or even this singing bowl, out to the plants, right? And put that in front of them and allow them to just feel the emanation of that perfectly tuned in harmonic vibration to the earth.
Nice.
And you watch them, and they literally, it's as if the fronds of their leaves, it moves. It's amazing, Riki. I've only just been picking it up in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, this was the Celestine Prophecy. You know, there's a lot of truth in the Celestine Prophecy, book, film as well. And
do you want to elaborate a little bit, because a lot of people, I'm sure, that are going to watch our video, tell us a little bit about the Celestine Prophecy.
Well, it was a long time ago I read that book, but that they were a group of people. One guy went to Peru, and I think he was probably called there. His sort of spirit called him there, and there was a lot of trouble going on in the country in that. But he met a group of people who were working with the land and that, and he found these manuscripts, and they had hidden teachings and all that. And each manuscript sort of came to him at the right time, which was nice, because that was telling us about coincidence and all that, And the insights got deeper and deeper, and then he started to learn things like, everything is energy, and the plants are alive, truly alive, and what you give out, comes back to you, and all the principles that I suppose we've learned in the Bible as well, and all the different religious books, some of the truest principles, Can't remember which ones you remember, but
I think the biggest thing that I took away from it was the color spectrum, when their consciousness was neutral, when they weren't being influenced by those that were chasing them, the fear and flight of being killed and all that. It created almost like a displacement within the natural environment. And when they looked at the foliage of the jungle, the vibrancy of the color spectrum had completely shifted, which meant that they were no longer allowing their consciousness to attach to form.
Yes. Wow, I remember that so well, and that's the bit I remember most. And then some army guys come past trying to find them, and one of the people sort of moves a bit into fear, and you can feel them come out of that vibration where their energy is emanating, which allows the people to be more likely to see them. So that shows us how the higher our consciousness is, these entity attacks through other people whose vessels are taken over get less, because we're so bright in ourselves that becomes a protection itself, which is what has happened to me when I sing, and I really enjoy myself. The energy is so, happy and excited and good, whatever it is, higher vibration, that we literally move into a new world where positive things are happening to us. And there's no longer this dark sort of leeching energy. We're not leeching from other people because we found something, we found our light, and they're not leeching from us. So, and that was part of the message in that book as well, wasn't it? About when you want to take energy from other people, but in the old days we'd just be naturally fulfilled by the nature around us, Yeah. So a lot of this is going to that. In our blueprint, we were designed to be around nature. And because we've pulled ourselves so far out of it, which I feel is part of the manipulation has been to do that, to get the humans out of their power so that their systems can be fed off, which is understandable. I mean, parasites will exist in any situation when someone's dying, and it is, in a way, it's a bit like we're dying because we're not really living, a lot of humans, so.
Most of us are not. Most of us are zombies, man, seriously.
So that proves the point again that when we're in our brightness, when we're in our light, we're living, which means that we're not attracting parasites that want to feed, because we're so alive that, we're fulfilled with our own energy.
I like that a lot, Riki, and it leads me to probably talk about something that, again, a lot don't talk about, and that is even in the Hindu, right? When I was really exploring Shiva and Krishna and and Vishnu, you know, because they're all embodiments of the same God energy that we are. I'm Vishnu, I'm Krishna, you know, I'm Shiva, you know. But what I noticed in some of the teachings, you know, is that a recurring theme was, if the sun, which is having all these coronal explosions on it, if you go to spaceweather.com every day, or Suspicious Observers, you'll see how each day unfolds a more expansive coronal explosion on the sun. These are mini solar flares. These are not solar storms, they're solar flares. And they generate what is known as a CME energy, right? Which is like the byproduct of a solar flare can be an ice age if it's big enough. The byproduct of a CME solar flare can be all the oxygen is sucked out and everything living on the planet is dead in a second. That's how quickly the fifth extinction could take place. So back in the Hindu, what they used to say was, as the gamma from these coronal explosions or displacements on the sun increased its magnitude, the Schumann resonance increased its magnitude, the photon belt around our planet increased its magnitude, there was more light coming into the human interface, right? The light body was being energized by this higher, intensified, illuminated light. And the shadow, the darker aspect of ourselves, couldn't hide. It can't hide when it's being flooded with light. It's being blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche and in the roller in the night. You know the track, right?
You know what's really funny is, like, you know, because I'm moving into this sort of like light mode, just want to say that, like, now when I do my next rock album, it's going to be like, you know, yeah, I'm flying high and it's all good and I'm happy, and it's going to be like, you know, rather than like a real sort of depressive sort of, you know, grungy. I'll do something grungy, but it'll be like high vibration grunge, you know.
High vibration grunge. I mean, even though dystopia, we'll get on that for a second, but even though dystopia can be interpreted as doom and gloom and industrial wasteland and chaos, there's a beautiful uplifting human message in all of it, right? At the end of the day. But let's go back to the Hindu for a moment. So the more light that we allow into our being, the harder it is for the shadow to hide. So we are allowing our shadow to be birthed out of our own light body illumination. Now, when that happens, what's really interesting is the shadow comes freely. It doesn't try to fight, right? It doesn't turn around and go, you don't understand me. You've hidden me away. You know, you won't face this trauma of this, you know, this molestation that happened when you were 6 years old or whatever it was, you know, because let's face it, many of us have been subjected to things that our conscious mind has chosen to forget deliberately, right?
Yeah, that's to create the doorways, in my opinion.
The doorway, absolutely. The portals in the aura. So when the shadow comes freely, you can embrace it. You can say, listen, hey, you know, I've been a little bit, you know, remiss here. I really should have been more forthcoming about recognizing your place in the bigger scheme of this liberated expression. But I would like to welcome you now. Is it too late to welcome you now?
Yeah.
And I think that is really, really something that takes us to levels, right, which the ancients understood, especially the Hopi and the Dugong and the, you know, the Cherokee and the North American Indian understood that concept of the brave and the, you know, the shadow brother and all that kind of thing better than anyone. And I think humanity has a real chance of reverse engineering its own conscious degeneration by allowing the shadow to become through the birthing canal and to be reborn into a very highly evolved expression of itself.
That's wonderful. You've got such an asset when that happens. It's like, maybe I can't quite attach to an example in my specific life, with the shadow clearly, but it would be something like, if I didn't get enough attention when I was younger, so then when I create my music now as a 38-year-old, there's still that pull for the attention, but when that's in shadow form and we're ignoring it, it's coming through in our life in ways which aren't healthy, isn't it? And it's coming through, in addiction, like, I'm going to go and get high, because like I need some fun, and I'm not having enough fun because I feel suppressed, like I can't have fun because whatever it is, So yeah, you're bringing that back in, and then it's working with you rather than sabotaging you. And this is the difference with what you say. Our own shadow energy is willing to work with us, whereas often an entity, only some entities are willing to work with us. A lot of them are like, no, I don't want to heal. I want to stay stuck the way I am. Our shadow is quite willing to, but it's those doorways which Till Swan talks about. I mean, I'm not with everything Till Swan says, but those doorways are what she talks about. So if, for instance, I had this feeling of not being seen or not being heard, and then it's an unmet need, and I don't embrace that shadow, like you said, then I'm going out there in the world, maybe taking on this persona, and even allowing this entity to come around me, this other energy who will give me this, like a lot of the women I see, give me this thing where men are like, the opposite sex are like, wow, but what they're actually not realizing is that this person has embraced another energy to satisfy the unmet needs. And this is what Till Swan was saying. So in other words, your need to be loved or your fear of being alone, an entity will use that, and the person who fears to be alone will then end up being around abusive, dangerous people all the time because they're so desperate to be, so this entity allows that doorway to get them in the wrong, around the wrong people. So it's not like these other energies have ultimate power, because we have the ultimate power. It's just that we've,
right,
in alignment with our shadow, there's a mirror that sort of mirrors the astral realm, where the whole is with our aura and then our shadow, because our shadow should be there. And in that space where my shadow would enter, I'd be like, actually, I do want your attention here, and I'm going to just be on stage and enjoy and allow this shadow to come forward, sort of thing.
I think you're right. And I think, just to sort of finish that off, it creates holes in our consciousness. When we don't embrace our shadow and we allow it to become freely moving within the astral expression, we create holes in our consciousness, and those holes need to be patched up, right? We need to be
toxic.
Exactly. And talking about Teal, a lot of people misunderstand Teal. Teal is what I would call, she's the warrior princess. She's the true embodiment of what a priestess would be in 2021. Not a priestess back in fucking 1988 or whatever like that, because that was all about homage and subservience and divine feminine and get down on my hands and knees and wear flowing gowns and all that kind of stuff. It's not about that anymore. That's the old mutant paradigm of what devotional practice and expression was. People have got to get it out of their thick heads that it doesn't work anymore to get on your hands and knees and go, God help me. What a crock of shit.
Yeah. And a lot of those archetypes as well, like I've seen people thinking, I'm a princess, so I, like you're being so demanding because you think you're a princess, it's like, so there's got to be a balance here,
Why can't people understand that as time, which is illusory, and space, which is illusory, as these two illusory elements evolve in our 3D expression, why can't we upgrade? Why can't we just look at it as an upgrade? Upgrade our DNA, upgrade our cellular memory, upgrade our physiology, upgrade our perception of reality. Why can't we just do that? I don't understand why everybody works against the concept of simplicity, to simply understand that as we move through this new wide timeline and into this new wide timeline, all that's taking place is basically a human upgrade.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's all I want to talk about. I want to talk about the fact that if you attach to something, question why you're attaching to it. And at the same time, if you are attaching to something, is it part of your upgrade to a higher conscious value, to be more experiential and to be more immersive in the way that you show up in the world? If the answer is no, if the answer is no, then what are you doing? Right? If the answer is yes, then great. Then you know that you're moving in a direction that's serving your soul.
I think that's all people want at the end of the day, isn't it? And I've noticed with soul loss, because soul loss doesn't have to just happen from trauma.
No.
As you know, soul loss happens from just not following your soul path. And, you know, I had to work that out a few years ago that, you know, what was this depression about? And I was like, well, it's not actually just about suppressed pain. You know, the trauma was actually, the depression was actually that I'm not aligned at this moment. You know, my soul is not happy with my current trajectory and what I've chosen to take on, or what I've chosen to attach to in this moment, you know. And of course you can break out of it. For instance, an example is, you know, like I've bought the recording interface and I've got a debt now to pay off. So if I wasn't in my power, I could let that pull me down, you know, because I'd feel like, oh, I've not got enough money, you know, whatever. So it's easy to make these decisions and feel like it's pulling you down when ultimately it doesn't have to. But there are other decisions that I've noticed that, you know, even if you try and kid yourself, they don't matter. They do matter to you. And the decision path that we take, you know, does matter. It's not just how we feel about it. It does matter if we start moving away from, you know, start moving to destroying the planet and, you know, making decisions that litter the planet. Like, it's not just my feeling about that. When I, you know, if I was to start destroying the planet, it's actually a real thing that would affect me on a soul level. So it's the discernment between, you know, what is something, which is really fulfilling the soul and what is not. And we can't just shy away from anything that's so-called negative and say that that's no good, because obviously some of these difficult experiences are really good for our growth. Absolutely. But I think we all know inside. We all know.
Absolutely. Everything is medicine. You know, like we said, we've been saying it for months. And just to sort of, you know, put this into a bit more of a context, the mirror of experience has two sides. So addressing what you just said about, you know, I bought the prism, right? It's expensive. It's a debt. I got to pay it off. Well, is it? Maybe you should go on, because you use social media a lot more than I do, but maybe you could go on there and say, look, guys, I've got a really, really good mic. I've got a really good interface, great cabling. So I've got a good signal path and a great capture recorder. I'm now making available myself as a guitar player, a bass player, a vocalist. You're doing all the vocals for me and everything else. And just use that as a means to offset what your conscious mind perceives as problematic.
I agree. And I think that'd probably be my answer once these, you know, drums and a few things are done with this album, you know, and then there's nothing as much to do. I think that's really good. So yeah, you're right. And that's right. It's how we, you know, what we feel about it and what we actually can do. So really, we're finding out here that this, ultimately we know this anyway, that the only thing that's holding us back is the consciousness of humanity, really. And I think that needs looking at more than, I mean, solutions need looking at, but we know some of the solutions anyway through this. It's the coming together, you know, so many principles that we can embody every day, isn't there? Like what you just said to me. So I think that we do need the upgrade at the moment within us.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that something like this video we have covered. So this has been such a beautifully painted canvas with so many broad brushstrokes, with so many interlocking and, you know, interconnective points of discussion that you can then share with people and say, look, if you really feel that you can contribute to something like this, then become part of this tribe, become part of this movement. Because the one thing, Riki, that I feel we lack I don't know where the people are. I don't know where they are. I thought I knew where they were. I went to the places that I thought I would find them, and I couldn't find anyone with sustainability. No one seems to be able to sustain their true spiritual outlook for more than a nanosecond, just like the millennial generation can't sustain their attention for more than a nanosecond. So please, how are we going to do that? How are we going to get the universe to well up under our cork and help us to build the core foundation of this movement?
Well, you just do this, and this, and then you're sorted, you know, to put it simple. I think, you know, fear is definitely one of the main things that's driving people, and it's causing them to just get out of the, you know, out of that centered space and go, you know, 1 minute, you know, you've seen it with me even, you know, like I'm with you 1 minute, and then the next minute I'm like, Mark, you know, last year, you know, I mean, I was going through quite a bit of stuff the last couple of years, you know.
We both were, man. We both were. So it works both sides of the fence, believe me. So
the fear, I think if people can come together in order to support, I feel that financial, you know, and root level stuff is what we even need to be able to support ourselves as individuals within the system, because we're stuck in the system as it is at the moment, you know. And I just feel that from grounds up, that's the problem that we're having, is that basically we're not connected with the earth, and we're not in our sovereign power as in general as people, you know. So I mean, on a practical level, like, that would take time to actually manifest, you know, like land. But you could say that with a group like this, that the intention would be one day to create that kind of place, or allow that place to unfold, you know. So I think we need to be able to move out of the fear and allow the qualities of each person to be able to come forward, so that they know that their soul path aligns with yours. Because I feel like mine, your soul path at least runs somewhat parallel. It doesn't have to run parallel all the time, does it?
No.
But the people in the tribe, they need to be somewhat aligned, you know. That's right. So that's really important. But it's a tricky one, because I'm not just going to blame it on the system, as in like just blaming. But what I'm saying is that there's so much control, and there's so much manipulation, so much fear in people's minds, that it's hard for them to break out of what's holding them back from co-creating something, you know. Or almost, when you mentioned the word co-creation before, there was almost a fear twang went off in me. I was like, what? Fear of what? You know, earlier, you know. So you can see that there's a lot going on with this divide and conquer agenda, which is here. So I think, of course, one level we need to be able to see clearly. And I don't know whether you can force a group to come together, you know. It's like, but we're not talking force, are we? You know,
we're not. We're talking... but okay, let's get practical, because this is what you do, right? You're good at this. Leave me out of it. I'm just going to be the dude in the back that comes up with workable shit, you know. But what if you put a group together that says, simple as your title, right? Do you want to live? That's it, right? Our group is called Do You Want to Live? Because it's a question. It's an easy question. You either want to live or you want to die, because they're the only two choices. You're either going to live through this, you're going to be part of the new world, you're going to be part of being able to rise to the challenge of the manipulations taking place, or you're going to die, right? Millions and millions of people are going to fucking die. Get used to it. It's reality. It's fact. I don't even mince my words for a second, and I don't care how many people get triggered by my what I would call my lack of empathy or compassion. It's not a lack of empathy or compassion. It's reality. You're going to die, right? You are going to die if you don't stand up and say, I will not go quietly into the night.
I mean, that's the thing, you know, like, thank you, Spirit. It's just hearing the words earth needs you. You know, as you're saying that, so that's it. You're pinpointing the exact thing there. You're saying that this is serious. And although it's serious in a way in which we don't have to be like, you know, producing loads of fear for these beings to feed off, because that's what they'd have us going. That's what's going on with this pandemic. It's more about the fear than actually the killing of the people in regard to the entities. Yes, the people like Bill Gates or whoever it is, I'm not going to actually say I know who it is.
No point anymore. We've been through all that shit at the end of the day. It's happening. It's that simple.
On the Earth level, yeah, it's depopulation, and there are those that know this isn't sustainable, you know, but on the high level, it's fear, you know. But anyway, lost where we were with that. But
we're just simply saying that would it be worthwhile to take videos like this, which cover broad brushstrokes on everything that needs to be addressed, if not addressed, at least acknowledged to a degree. And we put a group together that simply says, do you want to live? And put up a picture, right, for the banner of, you know,
I think that's good.
Two hands, one hand that has, you know, a beautiful blue sapphire crystal in it, and the other one that has a knife in it.
Yeah. Well, spot on. I mean, I think that is the type of thing we need at the moment, like extreme clarity cutting, you know, but that's due to the amount of amnesia, that's due to the disconnection, you know, of the human race. And I think there's a lot of truth to be shared. The other thing I strongly feel is that when people come together in groups like that, when they're being true, it's not about just let's all go here because we're all the same, you know, and let's all just collective together because we're all the same.
Yeah.
Because it's safe, but because we actually want to be real and honest, you know. So I feel there's a strong. We know as a humanity we're not moving forward if we don't come together collectively, and we know divide and conquer is the tactic of the dark agenda. So when we know what those things are, we know how to move forward step by step. And yes, I think we need to be humble and admit we don't know all the answers.
Of course, absolutely.
People are not really, like a few people that you've sent me, you know, they've been like that, and we're in it together. We've got parts of the jigsaw together. So in that sense, you know, there's a good there's a good possibility there of putting something forward, like you say, from a balanced place, you know, by saying that we're in this together and we do need to actually come together to actually live. And it is, you know, make or break sort of thing on the planet now, because what affects the future.
It absolutely is, you know, and I know that, you know, when spirit comes into focus and offers, you know, the vibration that's going to keep us protected and held in the highest, it's about being clear about what our intention is. Our intention is not kumbaya. Our intention is not meridians to the sky and, you know, Om Namo Narayani and all that. That shit's not going to fly.
I absolutely agree. And I think what's really, really important is I'm hearing people say to me, I had no discernment. I made these decisions and I thought everything was just love and light, and everything that's on my path was just meant to be on my path. You know, I had no discernment, you know. And it's like, what I realize here is that, because there is a lot of illusion, you know, and I've gone through this process of thinking about all this stuff and trying to understand the way forward, you know. And I was thinking, if we create a group of people who are isolated from the normal world, does that mean we're just avoiding the normal world? But the thing I failed to understand was that no, the problem is that humanity is at such a degenerative state that it's insane. So if the world around you has become insane, then, as Einstein or all these scientists said, you can't fix a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. So in coming together as a group with a more pure intention, whether that's scientists, doctors, technology freaks, you know, musicians like us, artists who come together to share that bounty with each other outside of the system, more on some land, it means that the potency and the protection that we have from a group who we have the shamans there, you know, someone's going through something, we got the shamans to protect the space. I think that what humanity needs right now is an example, not saying that we know the way, but that we're a living example of something that works. And by seeing the example that it works, 10 years down the line, it's like flipping heck, you know, like they've actually created a self-sufficient community that doesn't just borrow society's normal standards.
Yes.
They seem to have learned something that works, and they've holistically tackled the issues of life on this planet from the ground up, you know, to the land, to the psyche and beyond. So I think that this needs coming out from different angles. So it's I mean, I'd be putting out a call for community to come together with a deeper purpose. You know, that's what I'd be.
You think about what you tried to do last year. You created a hub in the form of Awakening Earth, where you were pinpointing eco villages and communities all over the world to come together and share their processes, share what it was that generated their sustainability from the earth. And what happened? People were in that kind of overprotective. I'm not going to let people know what I'm doing in my little neck of the woods, and I'm not going to, you know, whatever. So we have to decide, has our consciousness evolved to the point where we're willing to share, we're willing to open our hearts and share, or are we still basically stuck in the coveting and the holding on to our own agendas? Because if that's the case, Riki, what's the point?
I agree. That's mine. You know, it's mine. I own this, and you know, in the future we will still have objects and things that we own, but we'll be more of a sharing society. And I don't see there's a way forward, because it's unsustainable, as we've said, what we're doing to the planet. You know, so, and I think that the thing is the difference between people like me and you who are very, I mean, I'm a little bit quieter about things than you, but we're more humble about our approach, rather than saying, look, this is it. We're doing the great reset, so we're going to reset everything. Here's the third industrial revolution and all that stuff, which people are saying, you know. The problem is they've got great ideas, I'm sure, you know, but they're not coming at it from the place of heart and the place of connection to the sacredness of all things. And that's why, again, I'm just got to say that if we've not got that deep understanding of reverence for all things and what we create and what we do and what we mine from the earth and all of that, then this isn't something that's gonna work, because we need that connection from source, from spirit, to come into our very environment. And in mine and yours everyday life, we'll try and do that best we can. But of course, in a group whose intention is to do that, you're fortifying a stronger connection to source and allowing the universe to co-create with you. And that's why we're humble, because we admit, okay, humanity's gone down this path a long way, and we admit that we don't remember all the answers anymore because we actually fucked up.
Completely and utterly. Absolutely. Look, again, beautiful pearls of wisdom. Now, let's stay on this for a little bit longer. Let's keep it in a practical flow. What if you meet someone and you meet them and you have a conversation? I met a young girl the other day, and I was amazed at the high resonance of intelligence that was coming forth in the communication. But within the communication, hidden under all of the higher intelligence, was fear of execution completely. It's all well and good to talk about it, I said, but what about actually implementing it? Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. I haven't got the courage for that.
Yeah.
So I turned around and did something that was rather tough. I said, do you believe you suffer from trauma? Do you believe that you have traumatic experiences? Do you believe perhaps that those traumatic experiences have been so shut away, right, and haven't been dealt with, that you may or may not have created a darker expression of that in the form of perhaps a living and breathing, feeding entity? And
Possibly,
she turned
yeah.
around and she said, if that's the case, I would be finding just to live really difficult. And I said, well, what if that embodiment that you are not willing to admit? Because then she stopped me really quickly and said, and you, what about you? And I went, I got fuckloads of them. That's what I said. I've had that many exercised. It's ridiculous, right? That's how many have tried to latch on and control and hijack my vessel. But then I said to her, what if the reason for that is that in a previous incarnation on the earth, you were a serial killer? What if you were a pedophile? What if you were part of a mass murder or a genocide program? What if you were, a completely psychopathic, with no moral code murderer? And the absolute disdain and disgust that came forward of me saying this to this woman was like, what are you trying to say? I said, I'm telling you, this isn't your first walk on planet Earth. This life, this lesson, this expression of you as a student in the Gaia classroom is not your first walk. That's part of your delusion. You're going to do that and express that in this lifetime because in a previous lifetime, you haven't settled your debt. You haven't cleared your contract. If you kill someone, even if it's inadvertently, that person, that spirit has a right to do you in the next time around.
Oh, it can definitely happen. And the generations, there could be generational curses for sure. And this, jealous, upset person being, who can't let go of stuff.
The point I'm making is that if we end up getting a group called Do You Want to Live? And we ask each individual, because there should be a criteria. I'm sorry. We have to have a selection criteria. We did it with purity of heart. The questionnaire told us very quickly whether someone was ready to receive the higher teaching. And you confront them with that premise alone. Do you have trauma? Yes. Where do you think it stems from? Oh, blah, 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 blah. So you don't think that you've actually been the embodiment of a fairly nasty piece of work in a previous life. No, I don't believe in that. Well, what are you doing? You think this is it? You think that this is it? You do your walk. You achieve certain things. You aggregate certain things. You multiply certain things, and then you die, and then you waste away and the worms eat you, and that's the end of it. Do you really believe that? That is the absolute biggest con of all man ever.
Well, we've been lied to. That's been the general thing, isn't it? And I know that, and that's in our heads. That's been going on in our heads.
Pretty much.
There's people out there who think the voice in their head, a lot of it hasn't even been themselves, Yeah,
absolutely. Well, look, man, I think, we've covered a lot, and I really appreciate, you being forthcoming, loving, and open as you are. I think it's been a really good discussion. I think we've covered some fabulous points that we should share with the world, because I've come to the conclusion, man, whether I've got those trying to kind of surveil me at the moment and hijack me and potentially, remove me, I'm at the age where I've got no complaints. None.
Yeah, I hear you. And I feel a little bit like that. I've still got things I'd like to do, but it's stopped being a desperate, because, we have this sort of need to feel fulfilled, don't we,
Yes.
And I feel like I'd be ready, when I'm ready to go, I'm ready, which is a nice place to be in, because then it means that, your gender is becoming less
dependent.
Yeah, and which means you're able to flow with what the universe wants. So, it's the whole thing's just, it's difficult, but it's also easy at the same time. Because with everything that we've said,
Absolutely, because when we get to certain points of discussion, which is something we haven't really bridged before, then there is parts of us that are a little bit kind of reticent about trying to move too deeply into it. And that's okay. That's what real growth, that's what human growth is about. We aren't perfect. We think we are. We think we hold the keys to all the ancient locks. We don't, right? We're just one fractalized fragment of this human expression. But if we don't shift, and if we don't change and reverse, you know, at least create some level of, what do I call it? When you, anyway, if we don't reverse the polarity of where we've been and where we've arrived, there'll be nothing to tune into. There'll be nothing.
On the other scale, a human who really steps into their power.
Sorry, that's what I was trying to think of. If we don't self-correct now.
Yeah, I agree. It's
we're done.
It's so important, isn't it? You know, the universe and the earth is more powerful than us, but it's not the point. It's we have a chance. We have a chance. That's what this is. This life is a gift and it is a chance. And on the other scale of things, if we do stand in our power and if we do come together, then what we can create and the possibilities are massive. And I think people sometimes forget that it is actually possible. It just feels like a mountain, you know, to climb up, but it is possible. And the message of hope is as much anything. And that's another reason why I think it's okay to isolate ourselves from people who aren't well in the head, because you can't allow things to bring you down too much when you're succeeding already, you know, because you need to be able to protect. And this is a time to protect the seeds, because the true seeds, you know, like the Monsanto and all the seeds that's been messed around, we need to think about long-term protecting this planet, I think, and the sanity of our species, you know.
Absolutely. We're flying, so we're not going to clip our wings in the process to sort of, you know, curtail our the speed at which we're flying. So, you know, thanks, Riki. I appreciate it, man. I'll just close this this particular discussion. Thank you for all the protection. Thank you for all the discernment, and above all, thank you for all the truth. By the grace of God, so be it. Thanks, buddy. Love you, mate.
Have a good one.
You take care. Have a great day.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll, mate. Love you, mate. Cheers, bro.
Bye.
Okay. See ya.